I do want to take everybody now to the West Loop of Chicago, where Jussie Smollet's lawyers are hosting a press conference here to again talk about the state Supreme Court's decision to overturn the actor's convictions. Let's go ahead and listen in.
This team. Let me start off by saying this. Prosecutions should be based on facts. Prosecution should not be based on vindictiveness. This was a vindictive persecution, not a prosecution. Let's not make any mistake about that. The Supreme Court was clear. The rule of law and due process have to remain the fundamental process for which the American jurisprudence is run. It is not run by public opinion. Now, we face a big challenge, defense attorneys all around the country, especially in the age of social media, where there's a mass dissemination of information that are not facts in evidence. And the big challenge is holding the line for the rule of law. And that's what exactly this court did, and we're very happy with the decision today. We're very pleased, but it was expected. We shouldn't be surprised. This is the law of the land in this particular state and all around America. And so that's where we are right now, and we'll take any questions from you.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Sure.
In terms of Jussie pursuing the city of Chicago. Is he still pursuing that case?
Well, that's a civil case. Today we're focused on the criminal appeal. And that criminal appeal, we have a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court, 5-0. Remember, there was no dissent. 5-0, saying he was treated unfairly, that this was an unfair process. And when you have an unfair process, you have a travesty of justice, which is exactly what happened here. And Jussie's back. I must say this. Jussie's back to where he was. He's presumed innocent. Remember, the jury's verdict is now null and void. Of course, that's not the jury's fault. They were impaneled. But this was an unfair proceeding, period. And so he's back to where he was. And so I would like, the real question now should be, you know, even though this is over now and Jussie absolutely wants to move his life forward, I think people should start asking questions. How did this happen? Why should this even happen? What can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And what were the facts that we never bothered to look at because everyone was distracted with public opinion? Please. Yes.
Dan Webb released a statement earlier today pointing to the fact that the Supreme Court didn't take issue with any of the facts of this case, and therefore this ruling has nothing to do with Jussie's innocence.
Well, Dan Webb contradicted himself. He also mentioned that he disagreed with the Supreme Court's view of the facts and the law. So he said that. I read his statement. Statement is completely wrong, and he's been wrong all along. I have great respect for him as an attorney, but in this particular situation, he's completely wrong. And let me tell you why. You cannot say, hey, listen, the process is unfair. How we got here was wrong, but we're going to stick to the decision that was made from an unfair proceeding. And that's not how it works. No one wants to be treated badly or unfairly, and then you say, we're going to pretend like we never did that. Yes, we did it. We were wrong. We're going to put that aside, but you're still guilty. It doesn't work like that. He's innocent, and that he's always maintained his innocence, and there have been a mountain of reasonable doubt and evidence pointing to his innocence in this case that no one has bothered to take a look at. Yes.
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
One, what is the biggest misconception that you think is out there in the public? And two, let's say we had the same case, same set of circumstances, but it wasn't Jussie Smollett. It was Joe Blow off the street.
Yeah.
Do you think we would have seen a special prosecutor step in?
Okay, so answer the first part of your question. What is the one thing that people have gotten wrong? A lot of people believed he was guilty, and that's wrong. None of us believe that. The evidence, in our opinion, showed that he was innocent, even though it's not ours to prove, right? But if you're to flip the coin and say, okay, it's not yours to prove, but is there reasonable doubt? A ton of reasonable doubt. And that's our position, that's our opinion. If this was the regular Joe down the street, this case would never even have gone to trial. No prosecutor would have taken this case to trial. It was ridiculous. There was no direct evidence linking him to anything, right? And so it's a shame that we're here. I feel it's completely disgraceful. And some of you have been here. You followed me with this case. I've always said the same thing. This has been disgraceful. I was born in the United States, but I grew up in a developing nation. This is the sort of prosecution you see in developing nations. People are mad. Prosecute a person. They prosecute a person. This shouldn't be happening in the United States of America. It's ridiculous.
Nenye,
yes.
Have you spoken with Jussie, and what's his reaction to this?
Well, of course, he's relieved. I think the emotion I would describe is one of relief, and he's very happy and, of course, grateful to the Supreme Court for their decision and for, not to be condescending in any way, doing the right thing. I mean, that's what the court is supposed to do. That's why we have this process. But I think also we should remember that he's a human being. And like any other human being, I'm not a psychologist, but I'll wager there will be a feeling of mixed emotions. The emotion of happiness, the emotion of relief, but still the disappointment that you were dragged through an unfair process. And I think that's the best way I'll capture how he feels.
What's going to happen next now? What options does Jussie have at his disposal?
Yeah.
Is he considering filing a suit against the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, Dan Webb's office? Is there an action he's planning?
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of waste of taxpayers' money, hasn't there been, right? We've spent who knows how much. I don't even think there was a process where we could see how much the special prosecutor had spent on the case, because it's Cook County taxpayers' dimes going into that. And so we don't know. So I think at this point, Jussie wants to move on with his life. And he had already started doing that. I think this is a chapter, it's closed behind him. It's unfortunate what happened to him. He was railroaded. This was a travesty. And I think the truth eventually comes out. And that's what we're seeing here today.
Would you like to see an apology?
An apology? I'm sure Jussie would want an apology, but he's a realistic man, right? He knows he's not going to get it. After all, these are the same prosecutors that prosecuted a case, the special prosecutor's office, that they shouldn't have been prosecuting.
The city is seeking, I think there's a pending civil trial.
Okay, so you are listening in live here in the West Loop of Chicago as Jussie Smollet's legal team is addressing the media after what was widely considered a surprising decision, although his lawyer says, no, this shouldn't have been a surprise from the Illinois Supreme Court. It was a 5-0 decision to dismiss this ruling in an agreement that was reached between Jussie Smollett and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. So they're going to drop these criminals charges. And this is, again, an ongoing press conference here. We're listening to his lawyers, and he, in his opinion, there wasn't a focus on the facts in this case. He felt like it was a bit vindictive, and he, in fact, said that he felt like his client had been railroaded and that there was no focus on the rule of law and that there was too much influence from the public, especially in this age of social media. I do want to bring in ABC's Alex Perez, who's in Chicago and covered this case here since the very beginning. And so, Alex, first of all, one of the things they brought up pretty quickly here in this press conference is there possibly going to be, on their end, a civil suit in reverse? Would Jussie Smollett then return and sue? And he said, you know what, I think that we've spent enough of the taxpayers' money, and he really just wants to go on and live his life. He also, as I mentioned, Alex said, this shouldn't be a surprise to the public, but clearly today it was.
Yeah, Kana, he said he was not surprised by the decision, and you know who else was not surprised by the decision? The first district attorney who handled this case, Kim Foxx, the DA who made that plea agreement with Jussie Smollett, said this is what she believes the outcome of this case should have been. Now, in that press conference that's still ongoing there, Kana, we heard Jussie Smollett's defense attorneys say, calling this a persecution, not prosecution. They say that once public opinion changed and prosecutors revealed to the public that they believe that this was all a hoax, they feel that that's when prosecutors felt they needed to go back at Jussie Smollett, and that's why that special prosecutor was appointed to revisit this case. Then he was charged, and then ultimately a jury found him guilty. But Kana, his defense attorneys have been arguing since that special prosecutor was assigned to this case that this should have ended when he reached that plea deal and agreed to the fine and agreed to the community service. In their eyes, they saw this as a form of double jeopardy, and that's what they argued to the Supreme Court, Kana, and obviously the Supreme Court unanimously agreeing and dropping this conviction against Jussie Smollett.